Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our workshop, Healing from the Stress of Racial Trauma. I would like to remind you all that if there is time at the end, we will be answering questions. So if you are attending through Zoom, you can ask in the chat box or the question and answer portion. And if you are joining us on Facebook Live, you can just leave a comment. Our presenter today is Dr. Ruth White. Dr. Ruth White is a thought leader, change catalyst, and advocate in mental health and diversity, equity, inclusion. Dr. White is a clinical associate professor at the Suzanne Dworak-Peck School of Social Work at the University of Southern California. Prior to USC, Dr. White gained tenure at Seattle University, and she has also taught at UC Berkeley, Fordham University, and San Francisco State. Professor White has worked as a social worker while living in the UK, USA, and Canada, and has collaborated with nonprofits, corporations, governments, and academic institutions across the globe. Inspired by her own journey of recovery and resilience with bipolar disorder, Dr. White is a mental health activist and advocate who helps organizations reduce stress, burnout, and compassion fatigue. As a DEI consultant, she supports organizations in becoming more equitable and inclusive. With more than 20 years of public speaking experience, Dr. White has built a reputation for thought-provoking keynotes, lectures, presentations, writings, and workshops that lead to paradigm shifts, organizational change, and personal growth. Her books include the Stress Management Workbook, De-Stress in 10 Minutes or Less, Everyday Stress Relief, Essential Techniques to Boost Resiliency and Improve Your Health, Bipolar 101, and Preventing Bipolar Relapse. Dr. White also writes for Thrive Global, authors the Popular Culture and Mind blog on the Psychology Today platform, and writes social commentary on Medium. During COVID-19, Dr. White is a mental health contributor on the KRON4 TV Bay Area and has written several related articles for Fast. Have been featured on the Today Show, BBC World Service, national radio shows, and in popular media such as Marie Claire, Women's Health, Vanguardia, and Women's Day. Thank you so much for joining us today and presenting this workshop.
Thank you for having me. To everybody out there, thank you for taking the time to spend an hour with me today as I talk about racial trauma, how it impacts people of color, and how we can manage the stress of that. On this first slide, you will see the covers for both of my books. They are available wherever books are sold. So let me begin. This is a quote from Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor. And I love this quote because it allows us to see that we may not be able to control the world around us, but we can control our response to it. And so it says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And I hope that at the end of today's seminar, you will have at least one new way to manage your stress that will create growth for you personally and provide you with some freedom with regard to your mental health. So what are some of the ways that racism and racial trauma impact us with regard to stress? So there's just the stress of racism, right? So having to deal with the oppression, the discrimination, the implicit bias, all these different ways in which racism can impact our lives, from the individual to the systemic. Imposter syndrome. So a lot of people feel as if, you know, they don't belong in the spaces of achievement where they might find themselves. And that is because they were raised with stereotypes. And we live in a country where there are stereotypes about different racial groups. Internalized oppression. We live in a world of oppression. I often say that racism is the water we live in. And so a lot of times people have internalized oppression that comes from the outside, from other people, and they've internalized it to themselves. stereotype threat. And what that means is that when somebody tells you that you can't achieve something, this research has shown that if you've been told before a test that the group that you belong to doesn't do well on that test, then you do less better. And so this is not, this is something that has been documented over and over with a lot of different groups, whether it be women, African Americans, Asians, etc. And these are just a few ways in which racial trauma can impact stress levels. There are others, of course, but in the interest of time, I will go on. I know that this is how a lot of people are feeling right now. This picture for me is just a very, very powerful picture. It was taken by a friend of mine at Black Lives Matter marches in the UK, in London. And this picture represents how a lot of Black people are feeling right now and have been feeling for a long time, but especially in the last few months. And so I want you to connect to that feeling, but also know that by the end of this workshop, that you will be able to ameliorate this feeling whenever it comes upon you. But we have real reasons to feel like this. We have watched our people that look like us get killed slowly by police officers. We've heard story after story after story after story of Black lives not mattering to people. And so right now is a time when a lot of people are feeling the pain of racial trauma. And actually, I really commend you for being here and wanting to deal with the stress that you may be feeling as a result of the current times. We also, of course, have COVID-19 on top of that. You might understand this visual just by looking at it. And it is that Black people have had to carry a lot of burden for hundreds of years, whether it be from the Middle Passage to going through slavery, to going through Jim Crow, to dealing with the present situation. We carry a lot. We carry pain, we carry suffering, we carry struggle. Now that is not the only thing that we experience, but for right now, this is how we are feeling and why we are here today in this workshop. Now, protest is resistance, and we have been resisting oppression for hundreds of years. But there's stress that goes along with resisting oppression. There's the stress of standing up, speaking out, and feeling as if no one is listening, as if we've been marching for years and years and years. And yes, things have changed. There's no way I'm going to say that things have not changed, because I am sitting here having a conversation with you as somebody with a PhD, which would not be possible 100 years ago. If it was extremely rare. But at the same time, we still have so far to go. And speaking up takes energy. It takes time. It takes from us. It creates stress as we say one more time the same things that we've been saying over and over. Again, I want to credit my friend Wayne for this very powerful picture. What I also love about this picture is that this Black woman is in the center, and there are white allies on either side of her. Now, I want you to think about, in this moment, how do you feel? And I want you to take a minute or so to write down at least 3 words that describe how you are feeling in this particular moment in this workshop, as well as outside in your daily life. How are you feeling with regard to race, to racism, to protest, COVID-19, working from home, taking care of kids because school is out, etc., etc. Write down how you feel in this moment. Now I'm going to get to the next slide. So For me, the most powerful thing that we can do to manage our stress is to breathe. And breath work is at the foundation of yoga, of meditation, of mindfulness practice. So right now we are going to do a breathing exercise. So first I'm going to tell you what we are going to do, and then we are going to do it. So what you're going to be doing in this exercise is to breathe in through the nose for a count of 5. You're going to hold that breath for a count of 3, and then you will breathe out through your mouth for a count of 5. So it's in through the nose for 5, hold for 3, out through the mouth for a count of 5. And you're going to do this with your eyes closed. And when you do this, you will feel relaxed when it's over. And I want you to think about this as something that you can do at any time to relieve stress. Whether you're having an argument with your teenager, somebody is frustrating you at work, your bipolar symptoms are active, and you just need to take a moment to catch yourself. This is important work. Our breath is everything. Our breath is life. So let's get started. Close your eyes. You're going to breathe in through your nose for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold for 1, 2, 3. Blow out through your mouth. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now open your eyes. So that's the first stress management strategy for you to think about, is for you to take some time to control your breathing. What this does is it gives you mental clarity because it brings oxygen to your brain and to your limbs. It gives you a moment to slow down, to stop. It closes out the stimuli that you might be seeing at the moment, and it allows you to go inward and get control. Okay, what is stress? Stress is an evolutionary response. It's a state of mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or very demanding circumstances. Now, what does all of this mean? It means that stress can be positive as well as negative, right? So when it says a very demanding circumstance, me doing this workshop, I have stress in the beginning, right? I feel like, oh, a little bit nervous because I'm going to have to perform. It's how you feel before a speech or before a 5K race. But it's also the constant stress of racism. So then that would be an adverse circumstance. So you can have chronic stress that just does not abate. If you have a mental health disorder, if you have financial problems, if you have a sick parent or a sick child, what you will have is chronic stress. Acute stress goes back to what I was talking about when I said, if you're going to do a performance, a speech, a race, etc., that's the stress that gets you alert, that makes you more conscious, more aware, and prepares you to do a performance. Now, as an evolutionary response, what that means is that it really was a evolution. It was the response was created from danger, right? So back in the old days, hundreds, thousands of years ago, we would be in danger from, I don't know, a lion or a tiger or from another tribe or whatever it is. And your bodies would be prepared for life or death. And so there are 3 stress responses. There's freeze, fright, or flight. Sometimes people forget that first one that I mentioned, which is freeze. Now, either one of these 3 responses are healthy and fine. Everybody responds differently, and every situation is different. Sometimes you just feel fright. Sometimes you want to run, and that's the flight part where you just want to get away. And there are a lot of people who deal with stress that way. Something happens and they say, I just need to leave this place for a moment. And then there are other people who just cannot move. They just are frozen in place. Note that, again, each one of these responses are unique to the person and to the situation. Neither one is better than the other. It is just how you are hardwired. Now, here are some physical responses to stress. And this covers the entire body. So we start with our respiratory system. What happens, and again, this is why I start with a breathing exercise, is that you might breathe harder, right? So you have this very deep breaths that you're taking. You might breathe faster, so you might find that you're doing that. You may also breathe much more shallow. Some people get an asthma attack because of that stress to their respiratory system. I already talked about flight, fright, or freeze. There's also cardiovascular responses. So your heart will be pounding really fast. Sometimes people will say, you can feel like your heart's coming out of your chest because of those stronger contractions. In a chronic situation, you can develop hypertension because, again, your body is just dealing with stress over and over. And when the stress hormones come in, which is epinephrine, or also known as adrenaline, or cortisol, those chemicals usually take about an hour to 90 minutes to dissipate after a stressful situation. Now, if that stressful situation doesn't go away, like racism, which it doesn't go away, this is how you develop a response like hypertension, because those hormones that have your heart pounding all the time and going through all the stress, the physical stress on the body, you can get long-term health impacts from chronic stress. Gastrointestinal, heartburn, diarrhea, ulcers, acid reflux, and you might have stomach problems like constipation or flatulence or irritable bowel syndrome. You might have all of these conditions or as a result of stress. Remember this, stress is the #1 reason that we go to the doctor. That is stress-related responses. I talked about the endocrine system, about cortisol, adrenaline, etc. That also creates sweating. So for some people, their hands will get really sweaty. Some people sweat a lot under their arms. And so that is one response to stress that will tell you that you're feeling stressed out. You can feel it. The other thing, I want to go back to the gastrointestinal. It's not on the list, but I think it's important, is that also some people feel nauseous. For example, when I used to race, I was a track athlete. They would call, first call to the sprints or whatever it was that I was doing at the moment. And I would feel such nausea that I would have to go to the bathroom and vomit. So it's also another response that happens. Musculoskeletal, a lot of people get tension headaches. They'll feel it in their temples. People will be massaging because of the tension of the muscles there. You might feel it in your jaw. And so people will grind their teeth as they sleep, or even sometimes as they're awake if they're focused and concentrating. And so you get a tension in the jawbone near your ear. Excuse me. We also get muscle tension in our shoulders, our neck, our back, our legs. We will feel tension in different places. We also can feel stress in our reproductive system. You might have, for women, painful or longer or shorter periods. For both men and women, you will have less sexual desire. For a lot of men, they might have impotence. So as you can see, there are a lot of responses to stress throughout our body. And it's very, very important that if you feel that stress is taking over, and for people with bipolar disorder, and I should tell you this, how I got to the stress work is because stress is a cause for us to have episodes. Stress is a trigger for depression and for mania, and that creates a cycle of being more stressed out because you have these symptoms, etc. So make sure that if you're feeling that any of these symptoms that I just shared are overwhelming, or you're feeling them physically to the point where they're getting in the way of your performance at work or at home, it's important to seek medical attention. Now, there are also emotional, psychological, and behavioral responses to stress. As I pointed out a minute ago, there's depression, there's anxiety, there's irritability, where you just feel like everything's getting on your nerves, as we would say. There's anger, where you lash out at people because of that stress. there are behavioral symptoms as well, responses. Some people might start smoking, or they will smoke more. A lot of people will use alcohol to quiet the stress. Some people eat more, some people eat less, some people sleep more, some people sleep less, some people just withdraw, they don't want to deal with people. Other people will just sort of binge watch TV. Now, of course, it's 2020, so binge watching TV isn't always a behavioral response to stress, but it can be. You might have compulsive behaviors, or you might have poor self-care where you're not showering as often as you should, you're not combing your hair, etc. And so what I want you to do in this moment is to think about how stress impacts you physically, emotionally, psychologically, and behaviorally. So take a minute to write down 3 responses that you have for stress. So now we're going to get to personal strategies for coping with stress. And this is just a list that I'm going to go through. So the first one is to limit your media consumption. And this is really important because watching videos of people dying slowly or seeing people get beaten in real time is really traumatizing. It can get into our brains where we see it over and over, where it disrupts our sleep because we have nightmares, where we have fear that is so visceral, whether it is when you see a police officer or you find yourself in a situation where you've thought about the fact that Black people or other people of color have been violently abused in a particular situation. So I also think that instead of watching the news, you can listen to the news, because the visuals can often just stick with us and cause depression or anxiety. And it's much different to hear something than to see something. Yes, a picture literally is worth 1,000 words, and they can be very powerful images that are hard to get out of our brains. So I recommend that instead of watching the news all the time, that you listen to the news or you read the news. I get my news delivered to me every morning from the Washington Post and the New York Times in my email inbox. So I can click on the headlines and I can see the headlines that I might not want to click on, but it's important for me to know what's going on. You can also listen to it on your phone, on the radio. Also, you want to limit your sources so that you have reliable sources that you go to, and that in that limiting of consumption, you can say, okay, in the morning, I'll listen to the news for half an hour on NPR. You might be, in your car or something, and you listen to the news that way. And then in the evening, you might want to get an update, especially now during COVID-19 and a lot of civil unrest, depending on where you live in the country. You need to stay up to date on what is going on, but you don't have to be running the TV all day listening to what's going on in the news. Because remember this, there's no good news on the news, right? The news is, generally speaking, all bad. And what we know about humans is that we have a negativity bias, and we hold on to negative thoughts and to negative situations much longer than we do positive. So it's been said that it takes 4 positive events to counteract a negative one. So one of the things I also suggest is that after watching the news, that you watch something light. I don't know, cat videos, connecting with a loved one, watching a comedy special or a rom-com or something. So give your brain a counter to the negativity that is the news. You also want to accept uncertainty. What that means is that there's a lot we don't know, even with regard to COVID-19 or with regard to the outcomes of various trials, etc., of police and other people who have perpetrated violence against people of color. And so you just have to sit with that uncertainty. Also, you want to distinguish between the global and the local. What does that mean? There are things that are going on all around the world, but there are also things that are going on at home. And what's going on at home is more important for you to know in terms of your daily life. It doesn't mean that you don't consider the global news, but it's important to know that what is going on maybe in Portland, Oregon, isn't going on in Oakland where I live, so that I'm not traumatized by situations that are not directly impacting me. It is also great to connect with people that you love. And this is really challenging sometimes for people with bipolar because a lot of people burn bridges because of mania or their depression. But if you can reach out and tell people how much you love them and have them connect with you and tell you how much they love you, then we really can create a social support network that helps you get through any difficult moment, whether it be a bipolar episode or connecting with a shared feeling of sadness, but also strength and resilience when it comes to racism. Maybe you have a spiritual practice, whatever that spiritual practice is, whether you're just spiritual or you're a Christian or a Muslim, it's important for you to connect with your faith practice as a way of dealing with the stress of these current times. So really connect with that part of yourself. Find a routine that works for you in terms of practicing your faith. And movement. Movement is really important in dealing with stress. We sit too long. There's this saying that sitting is the new smoking because of how bad it is for us to have a sedentary lifestyle. And aside from the resilience that we'll talk about in a minute, if you're feeling stressed in the moment, it's really good to be able to move. You burn off a lot of that nervous energy. It gives your brain some clarity. So I often say to people, if you're feeling stressed out, you might just literally want to take a walk. I used to do this with my daughter all the time, and when would get worked up because of something she did, she would actually suggest, "Mommy, maybe you need to take a walk." And it's really important to be able to stretch if you want to, go into the bathroom if you're at work and you're feeling a little overwhelmed with a particular stressful situation. Go into the bathroom, do some stretches. Just instead of eating at your desk or in the cafeteria for lunchtime, skip lunch and go for a walk, get outside and get moving. And as I mentioned outside, the research is overwhelming that going outside is really good for your mental health and well-being. This is me and my daughter near Glacier National Park in Montana, where she lives. And I love being outside. It is my refuge. It is my joy. It is a place that when I've had bipolar episodes, I remember I had one where a friend literally just put me in the car and said, "We're going to a cabin in the woods somewhere." It has actually been shown scientifically that even a fake plant, even a fake nature, will reduce our physical responses to stress. So it will slow your pulse and calm you. So I really encourage you to take some time every day to get outside, get the sun on your face. The other thing that people may or may not know in the audience is that vitamin D is really important for mental health and well-being. And if you're African American or you have brown skin, it is harder for the sun to manufacture vitamin D in our bodies. So brown people, we need more sun than white people. And we need it so that we can produce vitamin D, which is a mood regulator, which is really important for those of us with bipolar disorder. So even if you're not doing your exercise outside, which I should tell you, when you do your exercise outside, you get more mental health benefits than if you do your exercise inside. So that might be going for a walk, doing some stairs, skipping outside, whatever it is, find some time every day to get the sun on your face. And if you can sit in a garden, whether that's your backyard or a public space a few times a week, take advantage of that as a way of connecting with nature. Humans were meant to be nature. I always say, for those of us who have ever spent time in a mental health facility, which I have, notice that a lot of mental health hospitals are in really bucolic settings with a lot of green grass, etc., because they know that nature is relaxing. And I also want to suggest that if you have difficult conversations, if you need to have a difficult conversation with a loved one, for example, you actually will have a much healthier emotional response if you're outside. I also suggest walk and talk meetings. So if you're taking a phone call, I've even taken FaceTime calls and Zoom calls while walking, because it's really good to for your brain function to be outside. It also facilitates better decision making. Affirmations. Now, I loved this picture when I saw it because I have friends who this kind of looks like their bathroom mirror to me, but it's a way of giving yourself words that empower, words that support, words that inspire. You don't need to put it on yellow stickies all over your bathroom mirror, but you can have an empowering phrase on the wall of your office, on your refrigerator, on your laptop. It's a way of giving you back confidence and giving you power over your emotions in the moment. So whether you write something like "you can do it," or "you're the best," or "this too shall pass," whatever it is that you need, it is great. Some people put it on their phone. I have a friend, her screenshot is our powerful words for her. So really think about how can you affirm yourself and who you are on an ongoing basis to lift yourself up and to give yourself the strength to go forward when it might seem like everything is overwhelming. A meditative practice is a great way for people with bipolar disorder to deal with the emotional swings that come with this illness. So whether you are feeling manic or you're feeling depressed, if you take some time to connect with your inner self, you don't have to sit in lotus position to have a meditative practice. Really popular right now are coloring books that get you in a state of mind where you're calm and it's having you focus on something outside of yourself. You can also be creative. Some people paint or they do scrapbooking. And yes, you can do yoga, but find a way to spend at least 5 minutes a day shutting out the world, focusing on something that brings you joy. And that is a way of centering yourself, of getting control of your emotions as well as your body. And I highly recommend this for people with bipolar disorder because oftentimes we feel as if we cannot control our emotions. And this is a way to bring back ourselves to center. Writing. Now, not everybody wants to, be journaling pages every night. Some people do. I've kept a journal since I was 16. For years, I haven't written in it, but I'm writing it on and off as time passes. But it's a great way for you to write down emotions. You don't have to write an essay to journal. You can write one word. You can clip something out of a magazine and stick it on the page. You can draw something in your journal that represents how you're feeling. But also for people of color, I think that it's important to have written records of our lives that people who come after us can read and understand who we are and what we went through. One of the most powerful things in my life is the biography of my great-great-grandfather, which his story is one of the few slave narratives from slaves in the Caribbean. And it's been amazing to read about his life, being captured in Africa, becoming a Christian in Jamaica, all of those things. So I really encourage you to think of your journal as something that, if you don't want to just make it a private document for your emotions and feelings, but as a way to document the times that we're going through, and make it part of your family history. But also note that journaling at night is a great way to put emotions, get rid of the emotions that you might be feeling that might keep you from falling asleep, because we know that sleep is really, really important. When you're writing, think about gratitude. Now, Oprah made this really popular, this gratitude practice. But again, the research is overwhelming that if we find 3 things to be grateful for each day, and you can start your day this way, puts you on, starts you off in a positive way, but it's also a great way to end your day, is to think about 3 things that you're grateful for. The research shows that it gives you hope, and it gives you optimism, and it gives you a feeling of positivity as you go to bed at night or as you face your day. It also, I often tell people, if you just got bad news, for example, or something's going bad at work, it's also a great time to think, what am I grateful for? Because you can start to really focus on all the things that are going wrong. And if you reorient that negative space to something positive, it's also great for mediating your emotions. Black Joy. Now, this picture is from the Black Joy Parade. This is the 3rd year of the Black Joy Parade in Oakland. And I love it because it is a way of celebrating culture, of celebrating who we are, of celebrating music, celebrating your food, your family, your history. Find a way to incorporate Black joy in your day or in your week. Find some time, whether it's playing some John Coltrane or some blues, or it means, looking. Right now we can do museums remotely, going through an exhibition of Black art or Black history, watching a documentary on the Harlem Renaissance. Whatever it is that you choose, you need to be able to counteract these negative images that we are being exposed to as people of color, and find a way to counteract that, because joy is resistance. Our joy is part of how we keep going when the going gets tough. Now I'm going to talk about resilience, and after this, I will be taking questions. So emotional resilience is, how do we actively and creatively adapt to stressful situations and crises? For people with bipolar disorder, stressful situations can be our downfall. Stress happens and we end up with a manic episode or a depressive episode, or on our way to either one of these things. So building emotional resilience is really important for us. And I covered some of this years ago when I did another webinar for the International Bipolar Foundation, but I want to put this in focus right now for the present time. So I have a 4-point strategy for building resilience, and it's based on the research. Whether you are Deepak Chopra or you're at the Mayo Clinic, these are 4 ways that you can build resilience in your body and your mind. And that is sleep, nutrition, so what you eat, activity, so that's movement, and people, a social support network. Now, sleep is the ultimate energy drink. I was watching, there's a video, a TED Talk that went viral around the power of sleep. And whenever I've written about sleep on my Psychology Today blog, or I had a Bipolar 101 blog, it's Bipolar 101 at blogspot.com. Whenever I wrote about sleep, so many more people would read my post than normal, because it is such a problem for people with mental health disorders. Mania is definitely not going to have you sleeping. And some people might sleep a lot with depression, but a lot of people don't sleep at all. And sleep is important for brain function. It is so important for our moods. One of the things is TED Talk, and I will share some resources after the workshop is over. One of the things that's been found that when we get less sleep, so when we fall back, in daylight savings time, there's a significant increase in heart attacks and suicide from just losing an hour of sleep. And it turns out that when we go forward in the spring, just that extra hour of sleep decreases suicide rates. I know that sounds crazy, but it is true. Sleep is so important. If you're not getting good sleep, you are going to feel it in your moods. I tell people we're just big 2-year-olds. Just like a 2-year-old starts to lose it when they can't sleep, the only thing that happens for us as grown-ups is it comes out in different ways, but it's the same physical response to being tired. We don't think clearly. We don't feel very well. Our brains aren't as sharp. We aren't as creative, and we get moody. So here are some ways to monitor your sleep. Now, caffeine and alcohol are really important chemicals when it comes to sleep. Caffeine is a stimulant. It has a half-life of around 8 hours. What that means is 8 hours after you drink that cup of coffee, half of the caffeine that was in that cup of coffee is still in your body. So if you're finding it hard to sleep at night, you might want to move that cup of coffee earlier in the day. I highly suggest for people with bipolar disorder to stay away from caffeine after noon. Now, some of us need the caffeine because some of the medications you take might make you sleepy, etc. But I highly suggest you take a walk, stretch, drink some water, and not continue drinking coffee into the afternoon. Some people might use alcohol to fall asleep, but it ruins our sleep. It might help you fall asleep, but you don't get good quality sleep. You don't get the good REM sleep that you need. So really monitor your intake of caffeine and alcohol. So you shouldn't drink alcohol any more recent than an hour before bedtime. Cigarettes, also a stimulant. Nicotine is a stimulant. So again, try to limit your consumption of nicotine in the evening. Screens, it turns out, these little phones and our laptops, they emit a blue light that interrupts with the production of melatonin. Melatonin is the hormone that makes us feel sleepy. And so turn off your screens at least an hour before bedtime. Don't fall asleep with the phone next to you, etc. Because the longer you look at that phone, the more you're gonna stay awake. Dark, cool, calm, and comfortable is how you want the room. Darkness also triggers the production of melatonin to make us sleepy. Cool, our bodies need to be cool in order to fall asleep and stay asleep, which is why it's easier to fall asleep when it's cold rather than when it's hot. You want calmness in your space, and you want comfort. One of the things I tell people, if you can't get darkness on your own because of the curtains or whatever, get some eye shades that literally block out the light so that you can fall asleep. Same thing, same time. Have a regular nighttime routine. Now, I say that, but I will just tell you, sleep is the bane of my existence. As someone with bipolar disorder, but just my whole life, sleep has always been problematic. And one of the things that I know is that when I do have a sleep routine, I get better sleep and your body gets ready for sleep. It's like a Pavlovian response. You can start an hour before bed, I don't know, reading a book, turning off the TV, taking a bath or a shower, or whatever you want to do to start your bedtime routine, brushing your teeth, etc. So if you find a routine where you do it the same time every night, you will find that sleep comes better. Now I say 6 is the fix, but 7 is heaven. But for people with bipolar disorder, what I want to say is 8 is great and 9 is divine. It turns out that 95% of people need between 7 and 9 hours of sleep. I know people think, oh, I can live on 4 hours. You might be able to live on 4 hours, but it turns out if you live on 8 hours, your life is better, your mood is better, etc. So really aim for about 8 hours sleep every night. Okay, let's talk nutrition. Here are some hacks. Begin with breakfast. So I like alliterations, they stick in your head. Breakfast gives you a great start for the day. So whether you have a nice full breakfast like what you see there with eggs and avocado and all this nutrition on a plate, or you start with a nutrition bar, a bowl of oatmeal, whatever it is, start the day off with fuel that will take you through the day. 5 a day, we all know you need to have at least 5 servings of fresh fruit and vegetables. How do you get that? Brighter is better. If you have a plate that has a lot of bright colors on it, now not fake colors, not food coloring, actual colors from nature, the brighter the plate, the more nutrients are on your plate, raw and real. So real food, is mostly in the produce section, and the raw, the better for most things in terms of fresh fruits and vegetables. Pretty the plate. Again, if you have a lot of different colors on your plate, you're having different nutrients on the plate. Green the grub. If you have green on your plate for every meal, you are much more likely to get your servings of fresh fruit and vegetables. And then finish with fruit. Use fruit as a dessert right now, especially the cherries, the nectarines, etc. Also know that a lot of things like blueberries and tart cherries are actually good for your mood as well. So I've written a piece on mood foods, but also know that you can monitor your moods with food. Activity. These are all the outcomes of movement. You have sharper memory, improved concentration, faster learning, elevated mood, right? So you get that hit of the endorphins when you work out and you feel better and your mood is better. You've also burnt off the edge if you have mania and you are feeling just on edge. Doing a workout, going for a run or a walk or whatever it is, a swim, whatever it is that you do, your yoga, your Pilates, etc. It is really, really good for people with bipolar disorder to have an exercise practice, whatever it is that you do. It is great for our moods. Whatever you do, skip, do weights, calisthenics, do something. It's better than nothing. Some people say, well, I don't have enough time today. You have 5 minutes. So if it's just 5 minutes of you doing some movement in place, taking a break in between meetings, you don't have to do a full workout every day. You just should do something every day. Make it routine. Put it in your schedule. 4 p.m. on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, I'm going to work out. Keep it moving. What that means is that you can take meetings while you walk. You can talk to loved ones while you work out. Again, taking it outside because outside brings the mental health benefits with exercise. People. Having a social support network is so important for us, people living with bipolar disorder, but also for us as African Americans, where we can have our loved ones, our families, people we care about and who care about us to provide us with support during difficult times. So really, you want to be part of somebody else's friends and family network, and you want to create a friends and family network for yourself. One of the ways to build these relationships and to maintain them is to give thanks and give praise. So many of us have had to rely on friends and family when we're ill or during these difficult times. Say thank you. Send an email that says thank you. Best of all, write it. It turns out if you actually handwrite a note of thanks, it makes you have more positive feelings as well as the recipient. Yes, that's what the research shows. Grace and gratitude. We're all going through difficult times right now, and being able to extend grace to people and, acknowledge that we're all having a hard time. Talked about gratitude before. Random acts of kindness. Just do something kind for someone. Makes us feel good, makes them feel good. Share and care. Don't suffer alone. Find someone that you can share how you're feeling, share your moods, share your emotions, and provide care for others who share with you. Now, all of these things are great, but they only happen if you schedule them. So you might not need a strict routine, but in order to provide structure to your day and to keep you on track, I say create a schedule. When are you going to have your meals? When are you taking breaks? When are you going to exercise? Put sleep in your diary. Make sure that you put out, I'm going to bed at 11, I'm waking up at 7. Celebrate your Black joy. How are you going to connect with your social support network? I tell people, if you schedule a call with your mom or your child or your friend at 4 o'clock on a Tuesday or 9 o'clock on a Wednesday evening, if you put that in your schedule, then it happens. Then those relationships that you need, you don't just have to have them when you need them, but you can provide support and levity. You can have a laugh. You can share what's going on in your day. Schedule that. And then coordinate these days because a lot of us are at home, coordinate with a partner who may live with you or kids who may live with you. So this is the end. And what I want you to do right now, we're going to take a minute, and I want you to write down Three things that you are going to do tomorrow to manage your stress or to build emotional resilience. Whether you're going to monitor your media time, you're going to do some exercise, you're going to create a schedule, you're going to reach out to family members on the regular, you're going to say, I love you to people, you're going to do something to get you better sleep, whether it's turn off your screens earlier, whether or not you're going to do some more exercise, take breaks during the day so that your brain has some respite, or you're going to create an exercise routine. What will you do? So now we have 10 minutes for questions. And so I'm going to ask Emily if she can monitor the questions that are in the chat box or wherever it is that the questions are going. And while I'm taking questions, here is how to find me on the internet. So my website is ruthcwhite.com. My email is ruthcwhite@gmail.com. You can find me on Facebook at Ruth C. White, PhD, on Twitter, Ruth C. White, on Instagram, Ruth C. White's Life, LinkedIn is Ruth C. White, and I also have a YouTube channel that is Ruth C. White as well. And on the YouTube channel, I have videos that are both around mental health and around diversity, equity, inclusion. So I want to thank you all for spending the last 50 minutes listening to what I have to say, and I hope it's been useful and beneficial for you, both as people of color and as people with bipolar disorder. And so, yes, now I'll take questions.
Thank you so much for this wonderful workshop. I mean, it was jam-packed with such valuable information. We do have one question so far. So how would you suggest people of color, address or bring up the racial trauma they've experienced with their healthcare providers, like their therapist or psychiatrist, and with the wellness plan that you just, provided, how they talk about that with their treatment providers as well?
That is a very good question. And I think for a lot of people of color, it is especially hard if the person that is providing your care is not someone who's also a person of color, because you might feel that they don't understand. So I say this as a precursor to my general advice, which is if racial trauma is impacting you, emotionally and psychologically and behaviorally, that you raise this issue with your mental health care provider by saying, this is really getting to me, and to share with them how it impacts you. And so it's not about necessarily, giving them a history lesson, but about sharing with them the negative impacts that racism is having on your life in the present moment or in the past, or any concerns you may have about dealing with it in the future. Now, that's whether or not you're having nightmares, you're just afraid, your anxiety levels have increased. And so they can deal with the behavior, the emotions of the feelings, and not necessarily have to deal with the history of it. At the same time, if you feel comfortable enough to have a conversation about, your activism, your protests, your engagement with speaking up for yourself, then share it. Again, taking the temperature as you go, because what you don't want to have happen is your mental health care provider ignore you or minimize your experience. So, but definitely if it is impacting your mental health, you should raise it in your communication with your mental health care provider, and also with your regular doctor. And I say regular in quotation marks because mental health is health. But yes, if you go to your primary care provider, it's important for them to know, because again, chronic stress shows up in things like hypertension. One of the things that I didn't talk about, again, just for time's sake, is obesity. African Americans, women in particular, have really high rates of obesity. Well, guess what? cortisol, which is a stress hormone and is particularly toxic when you have chronic stress, is it increases your appetite and it increases your desire for fats and sugar. And on top of that, it triggers a response where your body holds on to the fat. So you want to eat more sugar and fat, and your body holds on to it. That is a stress response. So identifying the fact that stress is having a negative impact on you, it's important for your doctor to know, because maybe you don't need hypertensive medication. Maybe you just need to manage the stress of the racial trauma, acknowledge it, heal it, and have your hypertension go away because you've been able to manage the stress of racial trauma.
Perfect. Thank you. And we also have another question. So for individuals who are feeling alone in this journey, in this experience, where would you suggest that they turn to? I mean, are there any online resources that you know of that are really great for people of color who need support?
That's a very good question. There are certain hashtags that people follow, and I don't have them off the top of my head. But if you do like Black mental health, for example, there are a lot of bipolar disorder Facebook pages, and I'm not sure if there are ones just for people of color in terms of Facebook pages, but there are some. So I would just Google Black people living with bipolar disorder, or Latinx people living with bipolar disorder, or people dealing with racial trauma, to find a community where people are having these conversations. I also feel like, if you have friends that are also experience this, is to reach out, because a lot of times people don't realize that other people are going through the same thing they are, because nobody is willing to share. And so sharing takes a risk emotionally, but it's also a great way to build relationships and to make them give them a depth that they may not have had before, because you're talking about issues that are important to you. So I say connect with your friends and family as your primary support. But if you don't have that, to really do some searching on Facebook. But now it's making me think that I should create a list of resources about that. And I do actually, I can share a list, because I do have a list that I've created. Part of it is from the NAMI website. So if you go into National Alliance of Mental Illness, they have a page for Black mental health. And of course, this month is Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. There is one called Black Girl in OM, Black Girl in OM. That's an Instagram page that focuses on Black women. There's Henry Health app, which is for African American men who are seeking therapy, but that's an Instagram page. I'm not sure if they also have a Facebook page, but I will share with you, Emily, a list of resources that I built on the NAMI resources for people of color, and you can share it with the membership. So I will do that. And there are actually other, now that I think about it, there's some social media groups on the list that might be of, and I checked them all out before I clicked on them to see that they exist. Of course, things change over time, but I will share that list with you, Emily, and perhaps you can share it on your website.
Yes,
Or
yeah,
share
I
it
can
with the
include
people
it.
who, yeah.
Yeah, we'll just include that list with our recording that will be available on our website. That's perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So that is all the time that we have for questions. So if anybody does have additional follow-up questions, feel free to email me at info@ibpf.org, and I can forward them along.
You can also, yes, and you can also email me directly at ruthcwhite@gmail.com, and it's RUTHC White, like the color, ruthcwhite@gmail.com. And also, Emily, I have some other resources around sleep and around surviving racial trauma that I will share with you for you to share with your membership.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. So thank you again for this valuable workshop, especially with everything that's going on, today, and to kind of end off the month of Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. This workshop recording will be available on our website and our YouTube channel, and will be available on our Facebook. So I invite you all to visit www.ibpf.org to learn more about our upcoming webinars and stay connected via our monthly e-newsletter where this workshop will be featured, and to also check out all of Ruth's amazing resources and her social media as well. So thank you again for joining us and presenting this workshop.
Thank you guys for having me, and for everybody who showed up. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I hope this information was useful and helpful for you as you go forward.
Have a wonderful day, you guys. Bye.